Here's the thing about this severe weather outbreak that nobody is saying clearly enough. It is not a Plains story. It is not an Oklahoma story. It is not a Midwest story. It has already hit Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, Michigan, and Indiana. It produced baseball-sized hail in Springfield, Missouri, where a hailstorm killed an emu at the city zoo and injured a rhea. It knocked down trees in Milwaukee and triggered nearly 100 emergency calls in a single afternoon. It sent 5 people to the hospital in Mineral Wells, Texas, after an EF3 tornado tore through the city on a Tuesday evening. It dumped 4.5-inch grapefruit-sized hail across Johnson County in the Dallas suburbs. And it is not done. The atmospheric pattern driving this outbreak has now been active for 6 consecutive days. It has confirmed 56 tornadoes in its most recent sequence alone, on top of the 80 tornadoes from the April 17th outbreak just 10 days before. It has shifted east, found new targets, and re-energized each time forecasters thought it might be winding down. If you live anywhere east of the Rockies and you think this storm does not concern you, you are wrong. Because the same atmospheric setup that produced an EF4 in Oklahoma 6 days ago is still running, and it has territory left to cover. Stay with me. Because what is happening right now across the United States is something that affects everyone, and almost nobody is prepared for what a multi-week severe weather siege actually looks like. Let's start with the geography, because the scale of this outbreak's movement is the first thing that makes it different from a typical severe weather event. On April 23rd, the outbreak began in Oklahoma. A tornado emergency was issued for Enid, a city of 50,000 people, as an EF4 tornado with winds of 170 to 175 miles per hour tore through the southern part of the city. 40 homes destroyed or flattened. Vance Air Force Base struck and shut down. 10 people injured. The strongest tornado in the United States since June 2025. On April 25th, the threat shifted south into Texas. A high-end EF2 near Runaway Bay, 80 miles northwest of Dallas, completely destroyed 1 home, heavily damaged multiple others, and killed 2 people. 20 families displaced, 1,600 residents without power. On April 26th, twin tornadoes were spotted in rural Oklahoma near Forker. The outbreak was not done with the plains. On April 27th, the threat moved east. A tornado tore through Clinton County, Illinois, damaging homes in Germantown and Carlisle. A particularly dangerous situation tornado warning was issued just before 11 p.m. for Stone County, Arkansas, a confirmed destructive tornado that stayed on the ground for 10 miles, lofting debris into the radar-visible zone above the storm. More than 300,000 decedents. Customers lost power across the Midwest and South. A PDS tornado watch covered northeast Arkansas, western Tennessee, southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, southwest Indiana, and western Kentucky. On April 28th, the threat shifted again, this time to North Texas and the Deep South. A third moderate risk in 3 days was issued for the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. The EF3 tornado that hit Mineral Wells packed winds of 145 miles per hour. 5 people hospitalized. The same storm produced at least 3 weaker tornadoes as it raced south into Johnson County. Grapefruit-sized hail, 4.5 inches in diameter, slammed Johnson County. Baseball to tennis ball-sized hail pelted Springfield, Missouri, killing an emu at Dickerson Park Zoo and damaging so many structures the zoo closed the following day. Straight-line winds of around 100 miles per hour hit areas near Doniphan in southern Missouri, damaging homes and outbuildings, injuring a child, and blowing a grain bin a significant distance. 6 days, Oklahoma to Kansas, to Wisconsin, to Illinois, to Arkansas, to Texas, to Missouri. 6 states directly struck by confirmed tornadoes, more in the path of damaging winds and hail. This is not a regional event. This is a national one. To understand why this specific outbreak feels different, you need to understand the season it is part of. Because the April 23rd to 28th sequence did not arrive in a vacuum. It arrived at the end of the most destructive April start in recent memory. April 17th to 18th, 80 confirmed tornadoes in a single outbreak, stretching 650 miles from Oklahoma to Michigan. 2 EF3s in Wisconsin, an EF2 in Lena, Illinois with significant structural damage, multiple tornadoes near Rochester, Minnesota. Northern Illinois alone recorded 39 confirmed tornadoes, the most of any state in that outbreak. April 23rd to 28th. 56 additional confirmed tornadoes from the second outbreak sequence, with survey teams still completing assessments across Missouri, Texas, and Arkansas. Combined with earlier April and late March activity, April 2026 has produced a tornado count that has shattered the historical monthly average of approximately 182 tornadoes. The month is not yet over. The NWS Chicago office, whose forecast area covers northern Illinois, northwest Indiana, and adjacent areas, published a remarkable statistical statement through April 19th. 128 severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings issued, a record high number through that date in the office's entire history. At least 20 confirmed tornadoes in that single office's forecast area through mid-April, matching or exceeding a full year's worth of activity in half a month. The April 17th to 18th outbreak produced those 80 tornadoes with 0 fatalities, a fact that emergency managers and meteorologists described as a testament to the warning system and community preparedness. But the April 23rd to 28th sequence has not been without cost. 2 people were killed in Runaway Bay, Texas on April 25th. Injuries in Enid, injuries in Mineral Wells. A child hurt by debris near Doniphan, Missouri. The toll from this spring will be calculated for months. The insurance industry will be counting claims from hail damage alone. Grapefruit-sized hail across the DFW suburban ring will generate hundreds of millions of dollars in vehicle and structural claims for years. The question every resident in the affected states keeps asking is the same. Why does this keep going? Why does it keep coming back? The answer is in the atmospheric setup. And it is a setup that has shown unusual persistence, driven by a combination of factors that have aligned in a way that forecasters have not seen consistently since the most active tornado springs of the last 2 decades. The core mechanism is a slow-moving extratropical cyclone, a deep area of low pressure that has been anchored over the central United States for the better part of 2 weeks. This system acts as a continuous pump. On its western flank, it draws cold, dry air southward from Canada and the Rockies. On its eastern flank, it creates a powerful lift that pulls warm, moist Gulf air northward into the plains and Midwest. The National Weather Service Chicago office explicitly documented this in its technical analysis of the April 27th wake-low event. A strong low-pressure system tracked across the Midwest, spurring a severe weather outbreak that affected a large portion of the region. The pressure fell 10 to 12 millibars in just 45 minutes across northern Illinois during the wake-low event, an extreme rate of change that the NWS noted is normally associated. Storm systems or hurricanes. Each cold front and dry line that rotates through this persistent low acts as a fresh trigger. The Gulf Moisture Pipeline, warm, humid air pumping northward from the Gulf of Mexico, refills the warm sector between fronts. Cape values, which measure the energy available in the atmosphere for thunderstorm development, have been repeatedly reaching levels associated with violent tornado production across the central United States. Dew points in the low 70s Fahrenheit in April, a number more commonly associated with late June or July, have been fueling explosive thunderstorm development each time a trigger arrives. The Wikipedia documentation of this event is precise on the distinction between the 2 phases of the outbreak. April the 23rd through 26th was driven by a near-stationary extratropical cyclone. April 27th and 28th saw an intense new extratropical cyclone move in just south of the first one, pushing the threat further east and south into Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and the Tennessee Valley. 2 consecutive intense low-pressure systems, back-to-back, with a continuous Gulf moisture supply feeding both. That is why the outbreak lasted 6 days. And that is why the threat zone expanded rather than contracted as the days progressed. Tornadoes dominate the headlines. They should. They are the most immediately dangerous and visually dramatic element of this outbreak. But there is a second dimension to the April 2026 severe weather siege that is causing billions of dollars in damage and receiving almost no sustained coverage. Hail. The April 28th storms across Texas produced hailstones of 4.5 inches in diameter in Johnson County. That is grapefruit size. The same storms brought tennis ball and baseball-sized hail to Springfield, Missouri, large enough to kill an emu at Dickerson Park Zoo outright, to injure the zoo's RIA, and to cause enough structural damage to close the zoo entirely the following day. Windshields were smashed across Springfield. Power poles were knocked down by hail. Earlier in the April 23rd to 28th sequence, large hail was documented repeatedly across Oklahoma and Kansas. The broader April severe weather season has included what may be an Illinois state record from earlier in the spring. Hailstones measuring over 6 inches in diameter in the Kankakee Valley outbreak. 6-inch hail is softball size. At the terminal velocity, a hailstone that size reaches falling from a supercell thunderstorm. It can cave in a vehicle roof, destroy agricultural crops in minutes, punch through metal roofing, and injure or kill anyone caught outdoors without shelter. The insurance industry's exposure from this spring's hail events alone will take months to fully quantify. A single hail swath across a suburban area like Johnson County, Texas, with its density of residential roofs, commercial buildings, and parked vehicles, can generate hundreds of millions of dollars in claims. Multiply that across the multiple hail, producing supercells that have tracked across the central United States through April, and the economic cost of this severe weather season reaches into the billions before a single tornado damage claim is counted. For residents in the active threat zones, hail is not a secondary concern. It is a co-equal threat. Get vehicles into garages before storms arrive. Do not be outside when a severe thunderstorm warning is issued, not because of rain, but because of what may be falling with it. On the morning of April 27th, something happened across Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Illinois that most people had never heard of and had no warning for. A wake low. The NWS Chicago published a detailed analysis of the event. A wake low is a relatively rare meteorological phenomenon that forms on the trailing edge of a departing squall line or storm system. As the storms move away, air rushes in rapidly to fill the lower pressure they leave behind, creating a sudden burst of high winds that can be as damaging as a standalone severe storm with almost no warning time. The April 27th wake low was, in the words of the NWS Chicago analysis, stronger than usual. The pressure dropped 10 to 12 millibars in just 45 minutes across northern Illinois, an extreme rate described as normally only seen in rapidly deepening hurricanes or the strongest winter storms. Wind gusts exceeding 60 miles per hour extended from northeastern Illinois and southwestern Wisconsin through northwestern Indiana and central lower Michigan. Trees were knocked down across a wide swath. Power lines came down. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson said the city fire department received nearly 100 calls for downed tree limbs. A large tree fell directly onto a home in Milwaukee. For residents across Michigan and Wisconsin who had been watching the tornado threat track east and thought the danger had passed, the wake low arrived as a complete surprise. That is the nature of the phenomenon. It forms and intensifies on the back edge of a departing system, in an area where severe weather is typically considered to be winding down. The NWS Chicago noted that their high-resolution forecast models had provided a signal that a wake low could develop, and that forecasters had communicated the concern. But the exact intensity and location were difficult to pin down until the squall line was already near Kansas City, approximately 10 hours before the wake low hit northern Illinois. For communities in the path, the warning time was short and the impact was significant. Beyond tornadoes, hail, and wake lows, this outbreak has produced a third dimension of damage that is affecting hundreds of thousands of Americans and compounding every other aspect of the emergency response: power outages at scale. By Tuesday morning, April 28th, more than 300,000 customers remained without power across the Midwest and South, a figure that had been higher overnight. More than 50,000 customers were without power in Illinois. More than 50,000 in Michigan. Louisiana and Texas added to the count as Tuesday's storms arrived. Multi-day power outages during an active severe weather period create a compounding crisis. The most immediate danger is warning capability. Without power, residents lose television weather coverage, smart speaker alerts, and any powered devices they rely on for storm warning reception. Battery-powered weather radios and cell phone emergency alerts become the only reliable warning systems, but phones must be charged, and phone towers can lose power or become overloaded with emergency traffic. The second danger is medical. Anyone dependent on powered medical equipment, home oxygen, dialysis, temperature-sensitive medications, faces life-threatening risk within hours of a power failure in extreme weather conditions. In April, when temperatures are variable, prolonged outages can also create dangerous conditions for elderly residents and young children in homes without functioning heating or cooling. The third problem is logistical. Crews working to restore power from Monday's outages are driving into Tuesday's storm zones. Trees fallen from Monday's storms are blocking roads that emergency responders need to reach Tuesday's damage. The backlog of uncleared debris from the first days of the outbreak is creating friction in the response to each new day's events. A multi-day outbreak does not just multiply the damage. It multiplies the logistical burden on every emergency system involved in the response. Power outage restoration crews from multiple states have been called in to assist. But restoration is slow when new storms keep producing new outages on top of those already in progress. The outbreak that has dominated this past week will eventually end. Cold fronts push through. The warm, moist air mass gets displaced. The CAPE values drop. The storm survey teams finish their mapping and the confirmed tornado count reaches its final number. But the season does not end with this outbreak. May is historically the peak month for tornadoes across the central United States. The same La Nina-influenced atmospheric pattern that has driven April's extraordinary activity will persist into May. The Gulf moisture pipeline does not switch off with the arrival of a new month, and the expanding tornado risk area that AccuWeather and other seasonal forecasters have noted, with severe weather exposure growing in regions that have not traditionally been considered primary tornado targets, means that the communities now getting hit, for the first time, need to treat May as an ongoing period of elevated risk, not a return to normal. The developing El Nino signal adds another layer. NOAA estimates a 62% probability of El Nino conditions emerging between June and August 2026. The La Nina to El Nino transition is historically associated with elevated tornado risk in the southern United States. Some European seasonal models have flagged the possibility of a super El Nino. which would push global temperatures to unprecedented levels and further energize severe weather patterns through late 2026 and into 2027. And then there's the broader context that this outbreak exists within, a spring that is already one of the most extreme in recent American weather history. The March heat dome that broke over 800 temperature records, the record-low snowpack across 8 western states, the railroad fire in Florida with 0% containment. The drought stretches across more than half the country. The wildfire season is running at more than double the historical pace. The storm affecting everyone is not just the tornado outbreak of April 23rd to 28th. It is the accumulated weight of an entire spring that has been running at the edge of what the atmosphere can produce. Here is what nobody is saying clearly enough. This is not someone else's storm. It was never someone else's storm. From the beginning of this outbreak, the communities hit were not abstract names on a map. They were Enid, Oklahoma, a city of 50,000 people where 40 homes were flattened in minutes. They were Runaway Bay, Texas, where 2 people did not survive. They were Mineral Wells, where 5 people went to the hospital and a warehouse was destroyed on a Tuesday afternoon. They were Springfield, Missouri, where a zoo animal died in a hailstorm and families came home to smashed vehicles and damaged roofs. And tomorrow, the list of names will be different, because the outbreak is shifting east. The next round of storms will find new communities, new towns, new people who were watching this on their phones and thinking, that could never happen here. It already happened to them. And they thought the same thing. If you live anywhere from the Mississippi Valley to the Appalachians, if you live in Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, or the Carolinas, the pattern that has driven 6 days of tornado outbreaks is not finished. The season that has defined April of 2026 as one of the most active in recent history is not finished. And the atmosphere that produced an EF4 in Oklahoma, an EF3 in Texas, a particularly dangerous situation in Arkansas, and a hailstorm that killed an animal in a Missouri zoo has not fundamentally reset. Know your shelter, know your county, enable your alerts, charge your phone, and take this seriously, not because we're telling you to, but because the last 6 days have proven, beyond any reasonable doubt, that this storm does not pick its targets based on who was paying attention. It just picks its targets. Stay safe. Share this and stay with us because this is not over. While national coverage moves on to the next outbreak day, the communities hit in the first days of this sequence are living through something that does not end when the storm passes. They are living through recovery. And recovery from a multi-tornado, multi-hail, multi-power outage event of this scale is not measured in days. It is measured in months. In Enid, Oklahoma, the Gray Ridge neighborhood looked in the morning light of April 24th like something from a war zone. 40 homes destroyed or flattened, some reduced to bare slabs, no walls, no roof, nothing standing above the foundation, outbuildings obliterated, vehicles shifted, crushed, and scattered, pickup trucks found inside leveled buildings, moved by the wind, wooden power poles pulled entirely out of the ground and thrown dozens of feet, trees snapped, uprooted, stripped of bark by wind speeds the NWS confirmed at 175 miles per hour in the most intense portion of the track. Mayor David Mason walked the neighborhood the morning after and told reporters he was grateful that no one was killed, grateful for the emergency managers and first responders who had worked through the night, grateful that Vance Air Force Base, which trains the next generation of military pilots, was struck but not catastrophically damaged. But behind the gratitude was a neighborhood that will take at least a year to rebuild and an insurance claims process that will be grinding and contentious and exhausting for every single family involved.